pleasure to kick off our second panel discussion of the day. The topic before us is Innovative States, Showcasing Transformative Journeys. I am delighted to extend an invitation to Dr. Ajay Kumar Sood, the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, to preside over this enlightening discussion as the chairperson of the panel. Dr. Sood's remarkable career in scientific research and innovation makes him a beacon of knowledge for this session. Now let us welcome our esteemed panelists. First we have Dr. Santhosh Mathew, the country lead for state systems and policy at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whose expertise in shaping policies has catalyzed transformative changes. Next on our panel is Shri Rajesh Menon, the Director General of the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, whose insights into the automotive sector will undoubtedly shed light on innovative journeys within the industry. Joining us is Dr. Amit Kapoor, the Honorary Chair of the Institute for Competitiveness. Dr. Kapoor's extensive experience in innovation makes him an ideal panelist to the session. Finally, we have Shri Rameesh Kailasam, the Chief Executive Officer of IndiaTech.org, a key player in shaping the landscape of technology and innovation in India. Together, they will guide us through a discussion that showcases the transformative journeys of innovative states. Let's delve into the narratives that have shaped their evolution and learn from the experiences of these distinguished panelists. I now hand it over to Dr. Sood to guide us through this enlightening conversation.
A very good afternoon to all of you. In this panel, we have 4 remarkable panelists covering different aspects of innovation. I'll make a few remarks and then I'll invite each one of them to give their views, and then we can have a discussion. We'll leave some time for questions from the audience so that we can discuss various aspects. So we all know, actually it is quite without saying that innovation plays a crucial role in driving socio-economic progress by fostering changes in various aspects of science and society. It is a primary driver for economic growth, and innovative industries, we know, our experience says that it also creates new job opportunities, because as new technologies emerge, there is a demand for skilled workers, researchers and entrepreneurs, which will of course lead to increased employment. It also is absolutely essential for competing globally. Gone are the days when Indian industries were doing something, old technologies and so on, but that time is over in the last many years. And now, if Indian industries have to be competitive, there is no choice but to be innovative and take early bird advantage of the new technologies. Innovation, of course, results in new technologies that will enhance the quality of life for individuals, and we will have advances in various sectors. Some of it we'll discuss today. It also leads, importantly, to social inclusion. And this is something which happens when you have innovative solutions, innovative society. And this is what is essential for the harmony and peace in the society, because it will also reduce societal disparities. So, keeping in view the very important problem in our society, in our world, is what we leave for the future generation, and that is the climate change, environmental changes. So we need to have the innovation in various technologies which are sustainable and which will have which have the sustainability aspect at the heart of it, and this is where innovation is absolutely essential for climate change mitigation. So again, I will not belabor the point that innovation in education and skill development again is very important. We need to see what are the innovative solutions where we can educate large number of people. If you look at our demography, look at the availability of universities, colleges, schools, we are obviously out of tune with the actual requirement, because we will need much more than what we have today. So the question is, what are the innovations we can do in education sector which will cut across all sectors and actually contribute to more innovation. So this is something we all need to think. This digital tool which we have in a very important manner, how can we integrate in education along with, of course, the other aspects. Digital education cannot replace the conventional one. There are different aspects of life which we need to address. We need to make not only technical people, but the people who are human beings, societal relevant, and so on. So again, education is another thing which will be important. Since it is a state-oriented workshop, Government of India has made significant efforts in capturing and understanding the state's competitiveness through various indices, which all of you know. I'll just put it on the desk just so to remind that we have India Innovation Index, which is a framework for the continuous evaluation and the innovation environment of all states and union territories. We have Sustainable Development Goal India Index. We have State Energy Index, which looks at the performance of states based on indicators covering the DISCOM's viability and competition, access, affordability and reliability of energy, clean energy initiatives, energy efficiencies, and so on. So the clean energy is a big thing in the last few years, and as we proceed further, you have looked at what COP28 declarations are, what are the issues. Again, this energy index, state energy index, will become very important. And of course, the state health index, without healthy society, we really can't do much. Again, very important to measure the annual performance of states. Good to see that there is a considerable progress over a period of time, and this is an ongoing process, and I'm sure that all the states will be working to improve on these indices, and conferences, get-togethers like this is just again making us sensitized, wake-up call to see where we should be going. So with this, let me invite the panelists, very distinguished panelists we have today. So we will go in the order which is given to me. They can make their intervention for, we have total of 10 minutes. They can take 6, 7, 8 minutes depending on what they want to say, so that we have some time left for discussion with the audience. So may I invite Dr. Santhosh Mathew to make he is a country lead for state systems and policy, BMGF, and I will invite him to make his intervention.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to Neeti. I'll make 2 points in the time allocated to me. Number one is some interesting work that the government of Uttar Pradesh is doing, and it has to do with what I call innovation of the professions. Now, the example I'm going to give you is from nursing, but it stems out of some work that I did in 2017 when I was in government as chairperson of the National Council for Teacher Education. I used to be an IAS officer for 3 decades before I joined the Gates Foundation. What the government of UP is doing is to take a labor market framework to solving the problem of professions, starting with nursing. Now, what does a labor market framework really talk about? The labor market framing is the acknowledgement that there is a serious information asymmetry problem in the marketplace. So if you heard of George Akerlof, Nobel Prize winning economist, who wrote the famous paper on market for lemons, it's basically for second-hand car markets, he postulated that a person going to buy a car in a second-hand car market, because she she cannot have any way of knowing how good a car is, her ingoing hypothesis is that this is a damaged car. Otherwise, why would somebody sell a car? See, that's the... And because of this information asymmetry, the equilibrium price point that second-hand cars can actually actualize in the market is actually below what its quality should actually signify. Now, if you take the same idea into labor markets in India, and what is important for states to consider, and that's why I'm talking about this here, is there is a significant regulation problem as far as the professions in India are concerned. And why am I talking about this in the context of innovation? Because I think innovation happens at multiple levels. This deep tech innovation that we heard about. There is the need, as Sandeep so astutely and very articulately placed before us, that solving the procurement problem, because innovation follows procurement. But there is also the innovation that has to happen at the level of individual professions. Because if you ask me what is India's biggest asset, India's biggest asset is people like you and me, citizens who have what it takes to be able to innovate and to steer the nation's progress. So when I talk about nursing, please think about this as the entirety of the professions. So what are they doing in UP? They're taking a very simple approach. One is grading of nursing colleges, so that children and parents who are seeking to become a nurse can make an informed choice about which nursing college to go to. Second-hand car market, you can't make informed choices because you do not know which car is good. In nursing colleges, you do not know which is a good college. In India, we have the brands of the IITs and the IIMs, but can we go longer? Can we get more sharper? Can we get more credible? Now, on the side of nurses, UP is moving towards a situation where there will no longer be nurses in Uttar Pradesh. You'll either be a grade 3 nurse, a grade 2 nurse, or a grade 1 nurse. And that's done by the regulator through a careful lifelong assessment of the skills, motivation, and competencies of nurses. So you will become a grade 3 nurse to a grade 2 nurse when you pass the examination frameworks, which include skills, plus the 360-degree constant feedback that's going to come from your workplace. That's how the grading will happen. Dilip Chanoy is sitting here, and we have worked together and fought with each other in an earlier life. But the entire skills ecosystem is also about this, right? How do you solve the labor market problem? The point I'm trying to make is that if at the state level this kind of innovation can be put in place, you will suddenly find that the true wealth of India, its people, are able to harness global markets, national markets, regional markets, and local markets. The second idea I want to leave you with is how do you promote local innovation, where the political leadership, the administrative leadership, the entrepreneurial leadership of local geographies can innovate together to be able to show progress to the nation. 3 trillion, 5 trillion, 10 trillion, name whatever number you want, that economy with that GDP will come when All parts of India grow, and they actually know which is growing and which is not growing. Imagine a scenario where, like, companies have to report on quarterly results, at the block level, you're actually reporting block level GDP results every quarter. If you use the NSSO framework of consumption expenditure to be able to estimate GDP, that's not going to happen at the frequency of a quarter. So what you need is what I call hyper-local, right? Hyper-local, high-frequency measurement of local GDPs. Why is this possible today? You have, through satellites, you can use what is called night light luminosity. You can actually use data from your petrol pumps, the consumption of hydrocarbons, petrol pump wise, pin code wise, actually you can do that. You take consumption of electricity or water where they are metered, you can use that. UPI payments, you can use that. There are several such measures because of the digitization and mobile phone networks in India that you can actually today harness for estimating local GDPs. Imagine state governments start publishing every quarter, right? Chitra, in Odisha, if you could get your department to lead work by which Odisha government is publishing every quarter the block GDP, then can you imagine the kind of energy that the administrative leadership of the block, the political leadership of the block, and the entrepreneurial leadership of the block come together to plan as to how can we bump up our GDP. And mind you, these are not manipulable numbers. You can't go and ask everybody to switch on their lights so that, you know, the satellite will show up greater and longer night lights. Or call data records from your cell phone towers. These are all non-manipulable sources of data. And as somebody said, what measures gets done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mathew. May I now invite Shri Rajesh Menon, Director General, Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, to give his comments.
Thank you, Dr. Sood. Thank you to Niti Aayog for giving us an opportunity to give a perspective on this very important point of discussion on innovation from automobile sector perspective. This automobile sector is going through an interesting phase. It is growing. It is growing in the last couple of years. It has reached a particular level of production, which is quite remarkable. But at the same point of time, it's also transforming and is going through a process of disruption. And this is where innovation comes in, because there is so much happening in the sector, and so much will happen in the sector in the coming years that states can leverage this opportunity, and there is so much we can do to facilitate and enable innovation. So let me first start by just mentioning what is happening in the sector. Automotive industry currently is working on different types of powertrains. We of course already have what is called internal combustion engine, where there's so much focus already on, so much work happened in the last many years on gasoline and diesel, but now there is a movement happening towards ethanol, and I see Dr. Saraswat here, we have spoken about methanol. There's also discussion happening on CNG. So these are additions and value additions to the existing ICE technology. But in addition to it, there is a lot of work happening on electric vehicles. And when I say electrified vehicles, which will include not just battery electric vehicle, but also what is called hybrid technology. There's also work happening in the space of hydrogen fuel cell, hydrogen ICE. So, and when I mention biofuels, let me also mention not just, we are talking about flex fuel vehicles where we are looking at a 85% ethanol blend to petrol. So there's so much happening in this space on powertrains and industries working in different technologies at the same point of time, along with, of course, facilitated by the government. Government has come up with some very good policies to enable, especially the PLI scheme, which enables industry to make this transformation journey. But what I wanted to flag is 5 or 6 areas where I see a lot of movement happening, and where I think states can leverage in terms of course, enabling a faster transformation journey, and also probably looking at investment, because all these innovation-led approaches will lead to new investments, and especially in manufacturing capacities. First, let me just mention is, in the case of electric vehicles, will be batteries. Batteries is an area where you will see a lot of focus. There's already a PLI scheme on advanced cell chemistry, which government has come out with. And our expectation, as per one of the estimates we have, is that we're looking at 120 gigawatt hour battery capacity by 2030. Currently, we will be around 25 gigawatt hour by 2025. So we're looking at a 5 times growth in battery. And this is a huge opportunity for new investments, which will come in the space, new innovation-led approaches, where you will see startups also playing a role. Startups have been a very key enabler in the case of electric vehicles. So that is one element of batteries where I see a huge amount of growth. As I said, 5 times of growth. And just to put it in perspective, roughly 30 to 40% of the value of an electric vehicle is batteries, so a battery pack. So that tells you how critical this technology will be for us as and when we move towards higher penetration of electric vehicles in the market. Second is cell. I think cell component manufacturing supply chain is still yet to evolve. It is completely import dependent. And to just again get a perspective, 70% of a battery pack is cell. So cell is again going to be a major development area. You will see a lot of focus on cell. And while the raw material of cell, which is lithium, nickel, and cobalt, is still imported, and I guess in a couple of years we might still be importing some of the raw material, but the other elements of the value chain of cell manufacturing, we expect it to happen in India. And what it means, electrolytes, separators, aluminum and copper foils, cathode mix, and this will be an element, will be an area where you see large amount of focus happening on local entrepreneurs, and of course established players setting up manufacturing capacity. So that is the second element. The first is batteries, second is cell, and other elements of cell, excluding the raw material where we still probably see imports. Third is charging. Charging infrastructure is extremely critical as we are looking at very high penetration levels of electric vehicles. And charging network will mean a huge amount of capacity addition for connectors, controllers, rectifiers, LED touch screens, contactors, isolators. These are the areas where you again see large amount of focus, which will be innovation-led. Again, local players, startups, and established players will be entering this space. So when I see a lot of developments happening in the next, when I say next year, I would say next 3 to 5 years. And the fourth is on hydrogen. And hydrogen, you'll see a lot of focus on hydrogen fuel cell and a lot of hydrogen ice. And there's a lot of focus and work happening on producing of hydrogen fuel, handling storage, and dispensation. And therefore, there will be a amount of investment happening in the area of fuel cell manufacturing, hydrogen storage tanks. So these are areas where we have already seen some local entrepreneurs, especially in some states who have entered this space, and you will see large amount of investment happening. And the fifth and the final point, which I want to mention on areas where you will see a lot of work happening, which is innovation-led, is conventional ICE engines, which includes alternate fuels of biofuels and CNG, gaseous fuels, where we are looking at huge amount of localization, because currently there are large amount of imports happening. As an industry, we are looking at large amount of localization in the current ICE engine capacities, which includes auto transmission, especially steering systems, engine parts, electricals and electronics used in the auto sector. And as you would know, that more than 50% or 40% is now the type of electronics which are now used in cars. So more and more you will see high amount of electronics being used in cars. So these are the areas which I mentioned: batteries, cell component, hydrogen, charging infrastructure, and of course conventional ICE engine, which is looking at a transmission steering system engine, where you will see new investments and new approaches of innovation. Where does states come in? I think there was a mention, the last session we spoke about enabling policy framework, because you will need to attract investment, you need to help them in terms of getting them to, wherever required, to help them in terms of capacity. So there is a PLI scheme which is already playing that role to some extent. But so two elements which I want to mention on policy. One is clearly, what there was mentioned in the last session also, One India Innovation Network. So it's critical to have a uniform approach to innovation throughout the country. And second is a policy regulation sandbox. How do you unlock opportunities in this entire space of innovation? And I just want to end by making one more comment, which I did not touch last time, is on connected autonomous vehicles. There's another area of work which is happening, IoT, which was also mentioned in the last session. There is so much going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years in the entire space, where I think states can play a very proactive role and enabling role to make this journey happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shri Rajesh Menon. May I now invite Dr. Amit Kapoor, Honorary Chair, Institute for Competitiveness, to give his comments.
Thank you, Dr. Sood. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. So what we are really trying to understand is about the innovative capacity of states. And if you really look at the idea of innovation, as Dr. Sood had said earlier, and it was said by Dr. Saraswat as well, that we have to understand the idea of productivity and how we are able to improve the productivity of our locations. And when we talk about improvement of productivity across locations, the idea is that how do I make my states resilient on various factors? And what are those factors effectively? One would be actually factor conditions, the demand conditions and the clusters and so on and so forth. But the most important point that needs to be looked at, or what states need to look at, and this is kind of a manifesto that I would actually want to talk about, is the idea of labor. And when I talk about labor, labor just does not mean that you have to make your labor laws easier and so on and so forth. What it means is that how do I improve the quality of labor that is available to us per se. Today, if you really look at it, when we talk about the demographic dividend, which is absolutely a fact, but we need to work hard to really make sure that we are able to get the best possible out of it. Just as a share of numbers, today when we talk about foundational learning, there are some dismal statistics that actually come across according to the National Assessment Survey. That means that learning outcomes that are there at the school level are not up to the mark. So we need to work on it. Once we are able to do that, you're able to move ahead in terms of the innovative capacity within those students, because learning outcomes matter a lot for innovation capacity per se. The second thing, which is a very important factor, is that was again touched upon by Dr. Sood, is about universities. What do we need to do about the universities is an important question again. Today, what we are really facing is that most of the universities are effectively becoming placement agencies. So when you talk about the IITs, the IIMs, or the XLRIs, or whatever be the institutions that we talk about, they are placement agencies. They are not set of institutions who are creating entrepreneurs. We need to find a way to really make sure that these institutions become entrepreneurial centers. And incidentally, our Prime Minister had also said India should be an entrepreneurial nation. The first thing all these institutions should do is that they should dismantle their placement cells. If they do not dismantle their placement cells, entrepreneurial spirit is not going to happen. Because you need to really drive that, because entrepreneurship is something which is one innovation, and innovation in terms of business models, processes, or whatever you've been talking about since morning, that is what we will have to do. And that is where job creation will also happen. Because the eventual goal, as it is said, is about prosperity of the nation. If prosperity is the thing that counts, India will become the third largest economy in the world without a doubt. But what matters is going to be that how do we make sure that each one of us is able to do something meaningful and contribute meaningfully. And that is what the thing is. Like, if you really talk about, the man is always known by the contribution he makes, and that is how it should be judged. The other thing, if you really look at, is there is this whole huge imperative on climate that we are really talking about. From my point of view, I think we are in midst of one of the major crises that the world is seeing. And when you talk about crisis in terms of, say, climate, that means we might actually end up becoming a defunct species in the next 2,000 odd years. We are primates, eventually very intelligent primates, but if we are intelligent primates, we are actually trying to make some sets of mistakes. So what needs to happen is that each of the solutions that the world is looking at, there was something talked about blue economy in the morning, very important. How do I use opportunities that actually exist across the board? The other thing that we have to look at is, when you talk about innovation capacity, we get obsessed with one single thing, and that is about GDP as a measure. GDP is an important measure without a doubt, but I think we are not imbibing what the Prime Minister had actually said. And we need to do that. And the Prime Minister had said it is about ease of living of people. So any solution that we create, if it is able to ease the quality of life of people, it is able to improve the quality of life of people, is the solution that we have to look at. When you talk about, say, the digital payment interface, why is it a great innovation? It's a great innovation at all levels of geography, for a simple reason that it eases the life of people. It improves the quality of life of people across the board. We need to find those set of solutions, and the corporate world should actually come across and doing it. The third thing, or the other thing that has to be looked at is about R&D expenses. When you talk about R&D expenses, the biggest challenge that we face as a country is about like, what do we do to improve R&D expense by the corporate sector? It becomes the pet peeve of the corporate sector to say, oh, government is not doing X, Y, Z. The government is doing so much in this country today. What needs to happen is that how does the corporate sector instill the spirit of research and development per se? Today, 70% of R&D budget in the country is driven by the governmental mechanism. 30% only comes from the corporate world. So why is it actually a missing element? It is not the ecosystem, it's the willingness to understand that there are possibilities that actually exist. Today, when you talk about entrepreneurs in the country, I was just talking to Nakul in the morning and I just got a very amazing insight that who are the people that we celebrate? We should celebrate people like Dr. Kalam rather than anybody else, because these were the people who really innovated and really created the innovation frontier. If we are able to celebrate people like those, that is when innovation capacity will actually get enhanced. We need to award people for making mistakes than anything else. And what are the states going to do about it is an important question for us. The other sets of things is in terms of, say, how industries are going to change over a period of time. And I take this point from Rajesh, like in terms of like automotive sector. Today, states have to be ready to really understand how technology is going to change the very industry structures that we have got used to. If you really look at the whole idea of automotive industry, we need to understand that within the next 20 to 30 years, the internal combustion engine in the based automotive industry is possibly going to be defunct. If it is going to be defunct, what is it that we need to do? We need to create an ecosystem which is able to work with electric vehicles, or you need to create a cluster which is able to do that. If you are not going to do that, if the states are not going to work on it, we are going to miss the plan. Today, I think states like Gujarat, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, they should work on really pushing forward the frontier in terms of saying that you should invest in electric vehicles, you should invest in technologies thereof, and move forward. In terms of, say, going at the state level, you also have to understand something very, very important, and that is about where economic activity is happening and what kind of economic activity happens at a certain location. When you talk about states, like where is that innovation happening? Or where is the GDP getting created within the country? There are 6 states which answer close to about 80% of India's GDP, about 100 different districts which answer for about 90% of India's GDP. That means there are those industrial centers, and we need to imbibe, or we need to push forward higher levels of creativity and higher levels of innovative capacity in those locations. Last couple of other points, like the question here is in terms of like how states are performing, what is it that we are able to learn from it? Something very important on the states, like if we are not innovating, if we are not at the cutting edge of technology, we are going to die down. The clusters will die down over a period of time. Something very important, if you really look at it, India was actually at the cusp of the, the sports good cluster at one point in time. But we have really gone down over the years. And why did that actually happen? Because we were not able to imbibe the new technologies that were coming in and really pushed it forward. So that is the whole thing that has to be looked at in terms of pushing or creating that industry and university interface. And if we are not doing that, we are missing a point again. Because if you really look at it, a country has to work. The industry will have to come together with the universities to really push the frontier forward. I see very few people who are doing that. Today, I see more and more enterprises investing outside or funding outside universities rather than funding universities in India. We need to do that. We need to take them to task as well. I'm not going to name the companies here. You know who are the companies I'm talking about. They can actually end up giving money to the Stanfords of the world or the Harvards of the world or the Carnegie Mellons of the world, but we are not actually funding our own institutions. Why is it that not happening? We need to make sure that we work on those sets of ideas. For that, of course, the university system will have to come together to really make sure that they're able to create outcomes which are required. But last but not the least, the most important factor that we have to understand is in terms of what are the kind of innovative capacities within the state. Like everybody did talk about the innovation index for states that Niti Aayog does. In fact, it has been a proud privilege to have worked on that index for many, many years with Dr. Sinha. In fact, he has also been my co-conspirator and partner in crime as the co-author for that work. I just wanted to share some of the new insights or what is coming through. with the new index, which is going to be launched shortly, hopefully. But if you really look at the most improved states, what are the most improved states? And the most improved states are of UP, Tamil Nadu, Haryana, and West Bengal. They're the most improved states on innovative capacity. But if you really look at this whole index, which is done on the measure, which is very similar to what you call as the WIPO index and things, wherein we use 70 indicators to understand and assess states, which give us a very huge insight into the ecosystem. And out there, what we find is that there are 3 categories that we build, but Karnataka, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, UP come on the top in terms of how they perform and how they've been able to build that ecosystem. And their ecosystem is amazingly strong, and we need to move forward. When UP says that they have to be a $1 trillion economy, they will have to further strengthen their innovation capacity as they move forward, because that is what is going to create jobs, and that is what is going to make the world move forward, or UP move forward. ODOP is a very interesting idea, and that's a very similar set of things that other places should also look at. In terms of, say, hilly states, Uttarakhand, Manipur, Himachal, Arunachal, top the whole thing in terms of how that is happening. But then, of course, if you really try to understand cities, it is effectively places like, say, Chandigarh in Delhi and Puducherry who actually do something very, very interesting. So what happens here is that we need to learn from each other as to what these states are doing. How are we doing in comparison to other locations? My pet question today is that how is it that we can actually make sure that Maharashtra or Karnataka or UP could actually become very similar to the Bay Area or, say, Massachusetts as a state or California as a state? Can we create those similar set of ecosystems? Today is the time when we are working in the world which is very integrated. Our measurement should actually move towards what other states in other countries are actually doing, because the competition is on locations rather than countries now. The competition happens between the state of Karnataka and the state of California, or a state in China, rather than anything else. So this is a very important aspect that needs to be continued to be looked at and worked on. Having said it, innovation is going to be the driver for the future. That is where value is going to get created. But I would just say that there are 4 things which are going to be very important. And when we talk about competitiveness in the future, and those 4 things are going to be, we have to understand sustainability, we have to understand shared progress, wherein people are going together. We have to make sure that social aspects are also taken care of, and solid. That is the resilience that we are able to build in the system. And if you're able to bring these 4 principles together from the competitiveness viewpoint and the innovation viewpoint, the country would actually be a far better, far prosperous, far active country as we move forward. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kapoor. May I now invite Dr. Ramesh Kailasam, Chief Executive Officer, India Tech, to give his comments.
Thank you so much for having me here. I represent India Tech, which is an industry think tank working with the founders and investors in the Indian startup ecosystem. It's a very critical kind of a backbone which is now developing in India, which is through the startup ecosystem. And it has been quite an experience for us in the last 6 years working closely with the center and the states on a range of issues. We find a lot of areas where the center has taken a statesman-like approach. There are certain areas where the states have taken a statesman-like approach. And there are areas where both lack. And that's the bridge we are trying to fix. We represent that segment today, which is entrepreneurial. So entrepreneurship is one vertical for us. Innovation is the second vertical for us. Investment is the third vertical for us. And livelihood creation and betterment of human life index is the fourth one for us. We operate in, and this is something which came out of discussions with Niti Aayog 6 years ago, and also with the government of India, and of course states and the startup ecosystem. Now, one thing, when I represent and say I represent the startup ecosystem, there is no such thing as the startup ecosystem. If you start looking at the business, they do, because, I mean, we work in 25 sectors, and none of them are common in terms of one startup versus the other, although they are all startups, because they fiercely work in that vertical. For example, an EV startup will be completely different from a travel tech startup or a crypto or a Web3 startup. And so, one thing that we realized after discussion with the center, state, and the founder and investor community was that there were three prominent areas that came out. The first thing was that we should be able to innovate, we should be able to grow, and we should be able to create wealth within India. And one of the things we found out was that most of the innovators were innovating here, but creating a holding company abroad, for the simple reason that there was a taxation issue, or for that matter, the investor wanted that company to list abroad because many of the companies couldn't list in India. So that was the first area that we worked very closely. In fact, Neeti had the presentation and it went up to the Prime Minister. And one of the things that came out of that exercise, which took for a year and a half, was that Indian startups should be able to list in India. We are currently working on one other thing, what we call as Ghar Wapsi, for a different reason, which is all the startups that have created holding companies abroad, can they come back to India? Because then we will stop being the back office when actually we are the front office. And therefore innovation and everything can be monetized within India. One of the things that, as I mentioned, entrepreneurship, innovation, investment, and livelihoods. Livelihoods is a very important parameter for us, because if you look at the population rise, I mean, it increases between 1.5 to 2 crores on an average in the past so many years. There cannot be so many jobs because there are only 1.3 billion formal jobs globally in the 170 countries put together. So therefore, what happens is that we have to create more and more work opportunities, and that's what the startup ecosystem has done. The good part about the innovation that's happening in the startup ecosystem is you have innovation happening in the consumer internet space. In fact, in the last so many years, in fact, in the last 10 years especially, if you see the amount of companies that have ridden on the internet and have created business out of it is phenomenal. Every consumer internet company that you you might have interacted with has used the internet to create their business platform. So whether you call it platform economy or internet economy, I think that's a huge area where investments have come in phenomenally. If you look at close to 300 billion worth of investments has come in the startup ecosystem in the past 5 to 6 years. And more importantly, the valuation is phenomenal. So therefore, if you look at the pyramid, the startup ecosystem with its innovation across whether it's consumer internet tech, manufacturing, edu tech, and so on, currently operates in more than 40 plus sectors. And the beauty of it is it employs right from the top of the pyramid to the bottom of the pyramid. What I mean to say is that you have people who are the founders, who are innovators, who are sitting and innovating on top. You have the mid-management, which is running the whole platform, and you have the gig opportunities that have emanated out of these platforms, which have created work opportunities for more than almost 1 crore people now. If you add up all the different forms of areas that these innovative startups have created. Now, the second question that obviously comes in is, are we playing in the manufacturing space? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, because there are certain areas where we have made progress, whether it is space tech, on drones, and so on and so forth. There's also a bit of electronic manufacturing which is coming in, and the government is pushing hard using the PLI schemes and so on. And also, of course, EV has been an area which has made significant progress. But at the same time, where we have observed as a gap between the center and state is the fact that for us, the first vertical was wealth creation. The second vertical was ease of doing business. And the reason why we are stressing on that is because most of the efforts that have been undertaken by the states and partly the center has been on ease of setting up business. Life starts after you get into the business domain when the taxman comes calling, the finance ministry comes calling, and of course, you have those ease of doing business getting roughened up on the corners and sometimes even vertically. So therefore, that's another area that we are working on regulation, for the simple reason that if you look at all these innovative companies that have emanated from different geographies, each of the state is strong in its own different geographies. I think one of the part that it suffers is the fact that the center may have come with a beautiful, innovative, overarching policy. It may be a state subject and the state may end up completely doing the inverse. There may be a beautiful state policy which may have come on a particular issue, but a particular department in the center may have thought otherwise and gone in a different direction. So we do have this roughening on the edges that needs to be smoothened up. And that's one area where the industry and the government needs to brainstorm and work together. We have found quite a bit of traction and phenomenal amount of engagement with the governments in this space, both as an industry grouping and as well as arms within the government talking to each other. I spoke about livelihoods. A simple example is that the government of India has come with a beautiful regulation on code on social security, but then you have states thinking otherwise, trying to come with their own codes, which is different from the central one. And for an industry and an investor, that can be alarm bells ringing saying, okay, there is not seeming to be a kind of a coordination between the center and state. So whether it is state versus center or state and center working together, these are areas which the industry looks on for. If you look at, and there was something, my previous panelists had spoken about pre-owned cars. That's another area which startups have grown phenomenally in India now. Government of India has come with a fabulous regulation on how to go about identifying these. But again, there the center-state coordination needs to come in because some of the states haven't brought their infrastructure up to speed in line with what the center has proposed and so on. Another area that we have seen we are working on and needs to be relooked at quite well is the fact that there are Indian startups which have innovated quite well in areas including energy management, including creating stuff which have not been invented anywhere else in the world, but are still waiting to get recognition for the simple reason that somewhere certain ministries tend to still believe that you need to follow a global standard in order to innovate something here. I think it's time for us to create our own standards, like the way we have shown in the case of digital public infrastructure space, where India is taking the lead to say, we have created digital public infrastructures like the UPIs, like the ONDCs and so on, and we need to be the leader in creating the standards around the same. And I think that's the kind of approach that will help a lot of innovation happening in the states, happening with the startup ecosystem and so on. In terms of growth, that's another area there we have been looking closely, and Amit did cover that briefly. We also need to advocate the fact that states need to not just compete and go after that one investor who has already entered the landmass of India and say, okay, shall I grab him to my state or should I allow them to go to the other state and so on. We should also be picking up, Amit mentioned about states, I would say also pick up countries. Like why not a Tamil Nadu picking on a Vietnam to say, hey, I'm going to compete and go after everything that Vietnam is going after because I seem to have a similar kind of strengths in terms of comparison. Or a Telangana or a UP saying, I need to pick a state which is fertile in terms of my demography, my capabilities, my manpower that exists in my state, and how do I go about comparing with that and so on. Few more areas that people need to look at is states should also pick up the RBI data and say, I'm going to compete with other states on improving my per capita. And that's an area where states can make significant progress. We did hear recently in Madhya Pradesh where the Chief Minister actually picked up and said, my per capita has actually grown. And that's a great start and an indicator for states to start competing on per capita as well. In conclusion, of course, I would like to say that we are seeing states coming up. We are seeing the center coming up with statesman-like policies on various issues. But I guess there needs to be a bit more coordination with the industry, with the center and states, working on actual ease of doing business issues, because I guess the ease of setting up has now been sorted. It's the ease of doing where we need to get cracking, especially because we are having a lot of disruptive and emerging technologies coming in, and each of that needs to be looked at from a different lens, both from a protective standpoint and from an enabling standpoint, and therefore there's a need for a greater coordination on especially disruptive technologies that are coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think before we go further, let's decide how much time we have now, because we are at 1:30 and no, so what's your upper limit on the time? Because you have next session at what time? No, next session, what time?
Starts at 1:20 p.m. 1:20.
No, 1:20 it's supposed to end. We are at 1:30 now.
Yeah, that's right, sir.
So
We are late by
when is the next session?
The starting time of the next session is 1:20 p.m. We are late
Oh,
by 10 minutes.
1:20 p.m.?
Yeah,
Wow, oh, that's a amazing thing.
10 minutes,
Okay.
sir. So that's fine.
Oh, I thought you were talking. So obviously we had very interesting presentations and we need to mull over a lot of things. The last part it says on the agenda sum up of all the four, which I think is very dangerous because in a few seconds you can't do justice to what all has been said. But instead of that, let me see if there are comments and questions from the audience to any of the panelists. Then we will see how the time is. Yeah, please.
As Mr. Santhosh has spoken that innovation is performing in UP as a professionalism. So that has to be taken care of, and he has cited for the grading of the nursing is a very nice example for the UP. In the same manner as the ODOP, UP is also doing one district, one startup they have started, and at least one startup incubation center will be there for the each district, and AKTU has taken this charge for just facilitating all the things for incubation. And we have also CDB and the IIDs are working for the incubation centers. So most of the things are happening. One thing also is mentioned here is the 100 districts are performing for 80% of the GDP. So that has to be covered up with the innovation, I think.
Thank you. I think it's quite self-explanatory. We don't need further elaboration. You are strengthening what was said by panelists. Any other comment? No, okay. So what I'll do is I'll take maybe 2-3 minutes just to see that what are the, supposing if I have to take 1 or 2 points from each of these four, they said many points. But just to see that we take home some message. So we had the first panelist, Dr. Santhosh Mathew. I think the point which was coming out was that we need to see how do we evaluate the true wealth of labor. How do we really make it a very clear indicator in the labor market framework. And here the other point was the local innovation. Can we look at the block GDP such that so that it motivates various blocks to come really to do better. So that was probably, if, with my apologies to all the panelists, because I'll be missing out most of the points, but only take home 1 or 2 points. That is something I thought we should think about. Shri Rajesh Menon, of course, elaborated on a very important sector, that is the automobile sector. And one of the things, of course, is batteries, big demand. Various electrochemistries are coming on the scene. Sodium ion battery is one such thing which is competing probably in short period with the lithium ion batteries, charging infrastructure, and so many other sectors where the innovation is really needed in the country, and of course policy issues which connect with them. Dr. Amit Kapoor elaborated on the again, how do we improve the labor, how do we improve the human resource. This is where again the universities come in, academic sectors come in, which create entrepreneurs, rather than he made a very provocative suggestion. I hope it's not taken in literally, to dismantle the placement cells, because country is not homogeneously placed for innovation, but I think it's good to be provocative sometimes to convey the message. Like in a movie, you make a forceful point and some of it will rub on to people. We need to really see how do we look at ease of living and improve quality of life as a big innovation incentive, and state innovation index and so on. And the last one, Dr. Ramesh Kailasam again pointed out how do we innovate, grow and create wealth in our country and avoid going our startups after starting here and setting up abroad. We need to really address this very important issues. This was also highlighted in our deep tech policy, which I would again request all of you to look at. This was initiated, this discussion, for almost many months, and now the deep tech policy is in place. A cabinet note is being sent as we speak by DPIIT, and this is one of the issues again highlighted there. How can we avoid this? And really need to create opportunities in our country to generate wealth here, and we must make sure that it happens. Not just the policy issue, but also the whole ecosystem, our approach, our way we deal with the innovators. This has to be looked at and create our own standard, as was mentioned. So I think it has been an extraordinarily set of recommendations which have come from all the 4 panelists, and I am sure we will all need to think, and I am sure Niti Aayog in their policy interventions will look at how do they work with all the state players to take it forward. With this, let me thank each one of you, each of the panelists and all of you for this very interesting session. Thank you very much.
As we bring the curtains down on our second panel discussion, we trust this session has been a source of inspiration and enlightenment, showcasing the transformative journeys of the states. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present a small gesture of gratitude. I would like to invite Dr. Neeraj Sinha to felicitate our panelists.
Ma'am, one point I would like to make, ma'am.
Ma'am, just move.
Okay.
जी जी उनकी पहले भी थी सर ईमेल भी किया था ना उन्होंने जी जी जी
So before we close, one point I just want to make, sir. Yeah. So I just want to make a point, sir, before we close down this panel discussion. I think what Dr. Kapoor said, like we need to dismantle the placement cells. Actually, what he meant probably was to reorient the mindset towards the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So here, what I want is like the lot of technology lies with the private sectors and the industries. What they should, instead of making investments, they should actually adopt colleges from the hard areas particularly, wherein they provide internships to the students who are the feeder to this entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that is one policy that needs to be regulated. I mean, that needs to be very strongly taken, that at least companies, they adopt few colleges, and particularly who actually requires, like a lot of colleges who are well performing that they are okay with, but there are colleges who need actually attentions of those industries where technology actually percolates to, percolate down the technology to the colleges so that the technical students, they get internships on board on the industry so that they can be a feeder to this entrepreneurial ecosystem. Thank you, sir.